Bill, for inviting me along, and also Niven, who I think is overseas at the moment. But oh, is he? Oh, very nice. I met Niven at the opening of these galleries, and we had a good chat. And he said, "Why don't you come and give us a talk?" So here I am. So I'm actually a mechanical engineer, but about 10 years ago, I decided I would give up my day job and follow my interest, which is really making interactive museum exhibits. So it's kind of exploring the physical world and science by making things, making analogies and maybe interesting ways of looking at things that might be unusual or surprising. So all of this has a kind of loose astronomy theme, but some of it is quite loose. So, but hopefully it'll all be interesting. Please ask questions at any point. I'd much rather you just interrupted me and we have a conversation. So don't just dive right in. So yeah, I'm going to follow my journey from. It was roughly 10 years ago that I did this. This was the first thing I did. So when I gave up my day job, I thought I need to do. No one's going to pay me to build something until I build my own thing. So this is what can everyone see if I stand here? You okay in the corner there?
Should be all right.
So this is in the silos down at the viaduct. This was an Auckland Fringe Festival in 2013, and I made these three. They're pendulums. So that gravity, that's the astronomy connection. So and each pendulum has got an ultraviolet laser on it. And it has a film of vinyl which is glow in the dark. So the ultraviolet laser leaves a trace of glow in the dark line. And there's three pendulums. One is I've got a slide for this. So one is a simple pendulum. So it's just a piece of string with a weight on it. And so it's doing a kind of elliptical orbit. And then this turntable it's motorized, so it turns slowly underneath it. So you get these sort of spiraling lines, and the light gradually decays, so it gradually fades away. So you get these quite interesting 3D effects. The second one was what's called a Blackburn pendulum. So it's imagine a Y-shaped piece of string, so hanging from 2 points, coming to a knot, and then one piece. So it's got a different frequency in one plane compared to the other plane. So you get what is known as Lissajous figures. So if there's any mathematicians in the audience, you'll have heard of Lissajous figures. So these sort of figure of 8 fish-shaped patterns. And then the last one is a double pendulum, and that's chaos. So this is chaotic motion. And I've got this here. So I might ask for a volunteer. Is there any volunteers? That's good. I like willing volunteers. So what we're going to do, I'll just take this cover off. Oh, can we drop the lights, please? And also, can we drop the screen as well? Awesome. So I'll just have this black, just for a bit of suspense, but also to keep the. So what I'm going to do, I'll turn the laser on, and what I want you to do is just give it a good old swing.
But how hard?
As hard as you like. But just let me get out of the way. Can everyone see that? You might need to stand up and. So it's basically just two rigid links, and the reason it's at a slight angle, you might have seen them before. People usually have them in a vertical plane, but having it just slightly off horizontal slows it down. So basically, gravity is it's reacting through the bearings at an angle. So the natural frequency is a lot lower, just so it makes the movement a lot slower and more fluid. Thank you. And so it's chaotic. It's chaotic. So basically, so you can have everyone can have a play at the end. But so what chaos means is that you could never position it you can never get the same pattern twice. And I think the reason, an easy layman's explanation is the fact you've basically got two unstable positions. So if I go uphill, both of these links are on an unstable equilibrium point. So the combined effect of that is, yeah, that it's chaotic. So yeah, this got me really interested in how I can capture movement and record it. What other kinds of patterns are there in the world that, or cycles that I might be able to capture and record in some way? And I came across these things, which you might have heard of. So it's a pinhole camera, and it's a special type of pinhole camera called a solargraph. So basically what it is, it's very sophisticated. It's an old drinks can, and you get a piece of black and white photographic paper, and it's just rolled in a circle like this. And then you just make a hole with a pin, so it literally is a pinhole camera. And then you put the lid on and you wrap it all in black duct tape. And the reason that it's curved, so you get quite a distorted image, but it means you've got almost 180 degrees of field of view as the light comes in, because if you can see that, the pinhole's at the front and the film is going almost 360 degrees, so light can come in from here and come in from here. So it means you can capture almost 180 degrees of your field of view. So here's one of, so what happens is it's black and white paper, and the light reacts with the silver, and you get an image. So if you leave that for like 6 months and take it out, you actually see the image. I don't know if you've ever played with photographic paper, but it kind of goes pink if you leave it out in the light. So it's that process. So there's no chemicals or anything. You just take it out at the end of 6 months, put it on your scanner, and scan it, and then you've got a digital image, and you can invert the colours in. So it's quite, yeah, I've done it with kids. It's quite a good, easy activity. And so this is one of my first images. This is in my back garden. You can kind of see this is the neighbour's house, and these are some trees. And that's 6 months worth of the sun. So this is looking north. So the sun's rising in the east, going through the sky and setting in the west. So you'll see there are sunny days and cloudy days. And we go from the winter solstice to the summer solstice. So in the summer, the sun is very high in the sky, and in winter, it's very low in the sky. One interesting thing here is this must be a deciduous tree. So in the winter, you can see there's no leaves on the tree. So you get that line through the, and then later on, the leaves have grown, and so it blocks it. And I'll come back to this, but yeah, can anyone tell me what that curve is from an astronomical point of view? Well, I thought it was the ecliptic. People heard of the ecliptic? Yeah. I thought it was the ecliptic, but I don't think it is the ecliptic, not quite anymore. We'll come back to that. But basically, it's the movement of the sun, and yeah. So here's another one. So I was doing this in lockdown, so I had plenty of time because I had no work. This is the Northwestern Motorway view, just from, there's a rainbow section of the cycle path. So it's looking north, so you can see 6 months worth of sun. But there's no cars. There's no cars, and it's not just because it was locked down, it's because it's such a long exposure. The cars are going so fast that they just don't register. So there were cars going past there.
So you left that can, and we're on the side of the road or something?
There was, so there's a railing, and then, so I did a whole lot where people found them and they think it's a geocache or something, and they rip it up. So I actually put it on the girder that supports I kind of leant over the side of the bridge and stuck it out of sight. And then this one's quite interesting. I started getting a bit more creative. So this is at Motu Manawa, which is Pollen Island Marine Reserve at the mouth of the Faux River. This is this triangle is the marine reserve sign, and these vertical lines are the sun. So I've angled it in a different way here, and you can kind of see in this one where the sun is sitting. But I got the tides wrong, and I didn't realise that a few days after I set it up, there was going to be a king tide. So this line here is basically water, reflection of water. And when I took the camera apart, it was half full of water. But still got an image, so I really like that image. And the colour is just, I think it's just the way the paper went pink. It's not actually orange on the paper when you take it out. So that one was just about a week. So there's about seven lines there. So then, round about then, I got approached by Nelson Museum to build a Tellurion. A Tellurion is, we were talking about that before, I think it's a subset of an orrery. So a Tellurion has the sun, the earth and the moon, and it's a mechanical model that describes the motion. Orrery, I think, has all of the planets as well. But there we have the sun, the earth and the moon. The earth axis is on a tilt of 23.5 degrees, and these three gears, there's one out here, it's probably easier to explain, but I'll just quickly explain it here if you haven't seen it. So these three gears keep the axis of the earth pointing in the same direction as it goes around the sun, and so that's what gives you the seasons. So depending on whether the earth is pointing, the axis is pointing towards the sun or away from it, you'll get summer or winter. The moon, the moon is on this little shaft that can slide up and down, running on this plane, and that's at 5 degrees to the table. So the moon's orbit is tilted just slightly, which is why you get eclipses sometimes and not other times. What else was I going to say there? Yeah, the numbers are not too bad. There's the month, so the moon goes around the Earth 12.4 times in a year, so 12.4 lunar months in a year, and I think it should be 12.37, so that's pretty close. The number of days in a month isn't very accurate. This is 30 days where it should be 29.5, but that's just because I can only get little gears. I could get a 5-to-1 ratio and a 6-to-1 ratio to give me 30, but I couldn't do 29.5. So anyway, you're not going to notice that. Some other things just to note, because I'll come back to them later. This is a northern hemisphere view. If you notice, the Earth is the conventional way up, and so everything rotates in a anti-clockwise direction. And here it is, actually, it was part of an exhibition, I don't know if anyone saw it, called Our Moon, Then, Now and Beyond. I don't know if it came to Auckland. Have you seen it? Waikato Museum, yeah. That's actually where this photo is taken. So, and then there was this big inflated, projected moon by Luke Jerram, I think his name was, as part of the display, So yeah, it's travelled all around the country and seems to have survived. So that's all good. Oh. So everything is rotating clockwise. So basically, the spin of the Earth, the orbit of the Earth, and the spin of the orbit of the Moon. So one other thing is the handles. So this was designed basically so that school kids could go crazy, because basically this, what school kids do, because that's what we want them to do, is get excited about it and play with it. But of course they want to turn the handle as fast as they possibly can. So I've geared it down so that no matter how fast you go, the Earth still moves fairly sedately.
Does the two handle work together?
So that's another, so all three handles have got one-way clutches in them. So if three people are winding at the same time, the fastest one is the one that drives it. And if someone tries to go backwards, it just does nothing. So it makes it pretty... I thought of that. Yeah. I've spent plenty of time watching children playing with my exhibit. So, yeah. Now I'm going to come back to this. This is was quite a big inspiration for me. This is a woman, Jenny Tomlin, who I've got to know since I saw this photo. But this is, again, the Faux River. So this is in Avondale. And so I think it's just over a few days. So we've got the sun, the arc of the sun, but we've got a reflection, but this is a tidal river. So I looked at it and thought, how come, I mean, would you expect that to be a single line? Like, would you expect it to be a reflection in one place if the tide's going in and out? And yeah, basically, if you draw a ray diagram, it's because the sun is effectively at infinity. So the angle that the light comes into the pinhole camera, if the tide goes out, the angle is still the same. It just reflects off a bit of water that's further away. But it took me a while to work that out. And in the process, I was thinking, how can I capture the movement of the moon or the movement of the tide in the same way as with a camera or with glow-in-the-dark film? Or so that was my next mission. This is still all in lockdown, so I had plenty of time to think about these things. And so this is my next project. So this is a clock that shows you the phase of the moon, but it's driven by the tide. So it's a clock escapement mechanism, but instead of a pendulum, it's got a float. So every time the tide comes in and you get a high tide, it clicks this wheel around one tooth. And so there's 57 teeth on the gear, so 57 high tides in a lunar month. And so if you look through that little window, it tells you what the phase of the moon is. So we've got, around this side, we've got, this is the wheel's going to go anti-clockwise. So around there, we've got gibbous moon that is getting smaller, so it's waning gibbous. And down here, once it gets to here, that's a waxing crescent. Yeah. So there it is. So this is Oakley Creek, that right down the bottom end. So Great North Road is up that bank. The sea is out to the right, and it's quite near the start of the path, if anyone knows the Oakley Creek path. And the Mason Clinic is up behind us, and the old Carrington Psychiatric Hospital. No, it's here. So it's actually quite a creepy place, but it was there for nearly 6 months, and as far as I know, only one person. I had a sledgehammer that I'd used to bash the waratahs into the riverbed, and I had it hidden under one of these tree trunks, and someone found the sledgehammer and stole the sledgehammer, but they didn't touch the clock. So, but yeah, I mean, it's quite pretty, but I was down there at night a few times, and I really managed to scare myself, hear funny noises.
How come flooding wouldn't affect it?
It does affect it, yes. And also there is a little bit of a cheat, because it has to be a reasonably high tide to actually push this far up the river. So, but I couldn't think of anywhere else that. So basically, I visited this every day for a month and took a photo. I'll show you that in a second. So it needed to be close to home, and it needed to be a kind of place that no one would find it. So I think the tide needs to be above about 3 meters. So that we're on some of the the low high tides. It didn't click over, so I had to manually click it over. So just little cheat. But this is like it's a.
Normally you would trigger twice a day, I guess.
Yeah. But there were some times when the tide just wasn't high enough. And so if you watch the arm carefully there, and also watch the paw. There you go. Did you see that? Is it going to repeat? Oh, I've gone on to the next slide. Sorry.
How long was this in real time?
This is about an hour, and I had a few attempts because you're trying to catch that click. And I had my phone left there, so I didn't want to leave my phone by the river for too long. But I think to play it, I've got to get my cursor.
To the middle.
There we go. So this time. Oh, hang on, there's some noise.
Oh, it's going. It's going, I think.
There you go. There is actually volume, but
Do I have to unmute it, right? Yes.
I could hear it somewhere very quietly. Oh, why does it do that?
That's the next one.
That's the next one. Now I've got to bring my mouse all the way across here. There you go. No, so it's basically it's a video sped up. So that sound is actually cars going past on the road up the top there. But you do hear the click. So that was that took a bit of getting. But what I found with this, it's actually quite hard to see what the phase of the moon is, and especially from a distance. So you have to get it quite close, and it's quite hard to take a photo. So the next stage of the project was basically redesigning the display. So now we've got to see the same gear here, and it's driving two bevel gears, and there's a sphere that's half black and half white. So that rotates. So every click of the gear, that's rotating. So there isn't any sound with this one. So this is showing a cycle of the tide coming in. So you'll see the arm going down. Yeah. And I think we'll show you this. So I've got, obviously there's no water. I was going to do some water, but I didn't want to risk getting the Stardome's carpet wet. So we might get another good chance for a volunteer to have a play. Or do you want to have a go this time? Do you want to change? Well, you probably both have a go. So this tube here sits in the, you probably saw there, this sits in the water. And if you notice, it's sealed, but there's some very small holes. And that's basically to act like a damper. So it means that if there's a big wave, the float doesn't get tripped when it shouldn't. So, so what I want you to do is basically lift that rod, pretend you're the tide coming in, and lift that rod up. Oh, hang on. So it's, yeah, try now. Well done. Yeah. And obviously the moon doesn't rotate, so it's just a symbolic way of showing it. So there's no craters shown on there because the moon's actually tidally locked, so that's why we always see the same face of the moon. So yeah, but it's probably the simplest way to display the phases of the moon. So I basically walked the dog and visited this every day for the lunar month of. So at the same time, I was learning about the Maori calendar, the Maramataka, and so this next. So this is a time lapse. So this is the month of Mahuru, which is named after Antares, the star, which is in Scorpio. So it's a lunar month, and in the Maramataka, each month is named after a star that rises in the morning before the sun. And so this is 30 visits, 30 photos put together as a time lapse. So you'll see. See, I'm no good at video games. So if you look carefully, you can see, so it's going from the new moon to the full moon. And you'll see some of them are taken at night, it just depended when I walked the dog. And the other interesting thing I found interesting was in the Maramataka, each time the moon rises, each phase has got its own name. So the new moon is Whiro, you might know this, but and the full moon is Rako Nui. And there are various, so every phase of the moon has its own name, and that's how you keep a track of time. And so the Maramataka is based on the sun, position of the sun, giving you your seasons, and then the moon giving you the days in the month, and then by environmental, like at the moment things are starting to blossom, so you know that it's spring. So so visiting it every day, and reading all about that, learning about it, it's kind of getting connected to it. I just found that really quite powerful, and I'd sort of be wandering around, kind of, and in my mind's eye, I'd think, what's the phase today, and where will the moon be in the sky? Because the rise times are different depending on the phase of the moon. So I found that quite interesting. Again, it's kind of lockdown. You've got the chance to get absorbed in these things.
But did you build that just for your own experience?
Yes, yeah. Well, yeah, which is made from old pallets, and but I would like to trying to get funding. I think it would make a great public sculpture in a place where, like at the viaduct or something, somewhere where people walk past every day. So you'd.
The harbours like Hobsonville or the viaduct, which is something like that, where people go by the water. Yeah.
So and also the water, the level would be quite consistent. It would be sheltered, so you wouldn't get big waves and you wouldn't get floods. And you need to see it every day, because if you're just watching it, nothing happens. Everything happens in a split millisecond twice a day. And someone asked about floods. So that one there, so the water was here, and at low tide it's basically at the ground. So that's like 1.5 meters of flood water. And so when I went down that day, I thought it had just been washed away. I wasn't expecting to find it. And then eventually I saw this little bit bobbing out. And then when I went down the back the next day, that's what was left. But I managed to bend it all back into position and get it going again. But that's one of the hazards of an urban river. Right. So I'll just move this out of the way. So now I just wanted to talk about that thing I was saying about being able to visualize where the moon is and having a feeling for where it rises and what the phases will be. Having built a Tellurion, I didn't actually find that very useful. This one you'll notice is this is one that I made for Otago Museum, and it's a southern hemisphere up, like the one in here. So you'll see Aotearoa is there. This is the South Pole. So everything, and this one is rotating clockwise, just to challenge a few assumptions. And if you've heard of Copernicus, this is like he was one of the first people to put forward the idea that the sun is actually the center of the solar system, and everything rotates around that. And prior to that, Ptolemy, his model was basically that the Earth was at the center, and I found that quite interesting. And this picture is just a lead into the next slide. So this is Mount Manaia up at Whangarei Heads, which is a very distinctive mountain. And then there you can see the profile of Mount Manaia there. So what I wanted to do was, I wanted to be able to stand on here and then watch what the moon did. So if you imagine grabbing the Earth and making that the center of the mechanism, so everything went around the Earth. So that's kind of what I was trying to do with this next. Oops. Skipped a slide. So this is, I'll move this somewhere to explain this. This is a bit flimsy, but so this Earth. I'll just before anyone gets funny ideas, I'm not saying the Earth's flat. So this represents the horizon in the same way that in the planetarium you'd see the horizon, or in the same way if you've used an app on your phone like the Stellarium software, it shows the horizon. So the Earth's not flat, but here we've got Manaia. So I built this when we were camping in where that view was taken. And the way this works is this disk is the ecliptic, which is we were talking about. So the ecliptic is basically the plane of the solar system. So the sun, the moon, and the Earth, and all of the planets are basically all traveling in the same plane. And so if you're looking into the sky, this disk represents that plane. And so when I built this, it was pretty much the summer solstice, and it just happened to be a full moon. And so, just go back. Yeah. So basically, I'm expecting the sun to do what I've got in that picture. So the sun rises in the east, but because it's the summer solstice, it's at its furthest point towards the south, so it's actually rising in the southeast. And then as it goes through the day at noon, it's almost directly overhead. And then as it sets, it's setting in the southwest. So yeah, that's quite cool, but that's kind of quite easy. And then the thing I found interesting, what do you think? When does the moon rise when it's a full moon? Does anyone know that? Yeah, so when the sun sets, the moon pops up. That's how you know it's a full moon. It's always has to be 180 degrees opposite, because you've got that face of the moon that's facing the sun is illuminated. But where do you think it's going to go relative to the top of Mount Manaia? I don't know if that's whether expert astronomers have an intuition for that or not. I certainly didn't, and I found this really useful to.
It would be like the sun in the winter, in other words, it would be lower.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, I didn't know that, and I was quite surprised when I built this. But sure enough, we stayed up at night. You'll see that the moon is right just above Mount Mania, and when we watched the moon, it literally just. So it was quite an interesting moment.
How did you get that to work physically with your model?
So how did it?
How did you replicate that with your model?
If you look, so when I first built it, it might be easier. I took this off because people were getting upset about flat Earth stuff, but you'll see that was actually a hemisphere. So that's how I made it to start with. So you've got, I've positioned it so that New Zealand's on the top. This is the South Pole. So this rod here is the axis of the Earth. And on here, so this is 37 degrees. So that's the latitude of Whangarei Heads. So this disk is at that angle. And then the axis of the Earth relative to the ecliptic is 23.5 degrees. So that determines the angle of this disk relative to the pivot. So I just made it like that, using those numbers, and built it. But what I've since realised is this is actually an armillary sphere, if you've heard of armillary spheres. So back in Ptolemy's time, they were all the rage, basically, as a model of the solar system. I find it very useful. So and the other thing I should say is, so every day, so the next day when the sun rises, it's moved roughly 1 degree. So it's moved in the sky relative to the stars. So that's the other thing I should say. Sorry, I'm not doing a very good job explaining this. So this is the ecliptic. So the stars are fixed relative to this. So the signs of the zodiac are actually positioned around the ecliptic. And then each day the moon moves 12 degrees. So it moves, that's a week. So it moves a seventh of the, so it might be about there. And once the moon gets to, like, if the moon's at right angles to the sun, if you've got to imagine the sun's not actually on this, it's at infinity. So again, the angle of the illuminated face is kind of parallel. So if you're now the little Lego man looking at the moon, you'll see half white and half black. And so this half moon rises in the middle of the day. And the other thing you'll see is that as it rises, it's the crescent, the illuminated part, is facing the sun. So this will also give you an idea of the angle of the moon. And I don't know if it's my brain, but I find the fact that it's a mechanical thing and you can kind of see this strange motion makes it easier for me to comprehend. So.
One thing I mentioned about when the sun's high in the sky and the moon's low, so in other words the summer, that's why we don't like summer oppositions for observing planets, because at night in the summer the planets are going to be lower in the sky because that part of the ecliptic is lower. So if you're wanting to image Saturn or Jupiter, it's best if you use a winter opposition. The problem is you have to wait a long time for Saturn to return to a winter opposition. But at the moment, Jupiter's way off winter now, and Saturn is still not too bad, but still not bad time to image Saturn. But not the most favourable time for imaging Jupiter oppositions, and it's getting into that part of the ecliptic where it would be lower in the sky. Just a bit of an aside.
I've lost. So there are some other things. I think that's probably, you get the general idea of that. But I have also tried putting stars. You can also explain Maungakiekie disappearing and reappearing by where it sits relative to the sun. So I think it would make a good educational tool. It's a bit like having a portable planetarium, but
You consider how complex it would be to have the sun and the moon geared?
I have considered it. Yeah. But I also kind of think, as a learning thing, it's quite good to position them, because you have to then think about where they are relative. Yeah. Well, I actually thought of motorizing it with stepper motors rather than using gears, but it probably, it's the same mechanism as the Tellurion, kind of backwards.
I don't know if you heard about it, but the ancient Greek astronomer Aristarchus, he actually believed in a solar-centric solar system. One of the things he did was this idea, he was showing the phase of the moon when it's exactly at the half phase. The reason that if you could time that exactly and then measure the angle between the sun and the moon, you could figure out the ratio of your distances. And he calculated that the sun was, I think, 40 times further away from the moon, which is way out. But
Okay.
in fact, the method actually works, but it's very hard to measure exactly when
when it's exactly a half.
Yeah.
I think
Sorry, no, he didn't have a telescope, so the concept he had was geometrically correct, so pretty interesting they were doing that sort of thing 2,500 years ago.
Yeah. I think the full moon is the one that's the easiest, the most accurate to pinpoint, because it's diagonally, because it's the sun sets and the moon rises. So now I'm just going to talk a bit about the Stardome. So I was lucky enough to get in touch with Victoria and work with the team to do some of these interactives out here. So we kind of had a brainstorming session. So I came along with all this stuff and sort of just let rip. And so some of the ideas they said, yeah, we can use that, and others they thought people might think it's a flat Earth. So we didn't quite make it into the gallery, or weren't really astronomy, or might have been a bit too crazy. So we'll walk around, but I've just got a few slides just to tell you some things to look out for. So this is, so I talked a little bit about the Maungakiekie and the lunar months. So there's a thing called heliacal rising, so where stars rise just before the sun. And as I said before, the sun's moving relative to the stars. So each month it's going to be a different star that you see. So this is Mahuru. So this is that same month that I took the time lapse of, and it's part of Hydra. It's Alpha Hydra, I think is the name. Is that Greek name of the star? So you turn this handle, and basically you'll see the star rising above the horizon, and then there's a little spring detente, and it fixes into place. So there's 12 little panels that pop up with the 12 different names. So each month is named after a different star.
Alpha Hydra is named Alfred.
Alfred, yeah. Is that a shortening of Alpha Hydra, or is it?
No, that's its name.
Alfred, yeah. So was Alpha Hydra an alternative name? Because I looked at that on Stellarium before I came out today.
I don't know.
But
they call it Alpha Hydra and Alfred.
Yeah.
It's a Latin name.
And the glow there just tells you, it's just to signify that it's sunrise that you're looking at there. Sorry, I've skipped on. So this is a Tellurion, similar to the ones before. So the unique things about this is a southern hemisphere up, so everything's going clockwise. This has got an illuminated sun, which is probably the most beautiful of them. So this is, yeah, I think the prettiest Tellurion I've made. I think that was all that's unique about that. And the first time I was here after the opening, there were 3 Cub packs, Cub Scouts that had come in, and they were spinning. That Earth was, but yeah, it seems to have survived, so that's all good. So this is the one someone was talking about an eclipse, but this is actually to do with the phases of the moon. And this, this is probably one of my favourites. This is like the Copernicus view of the solar system, with the sun, the Earth and the moon on a flat with the sun at the centre. So you can rotate this around and visualise what the phase is going to be. And then you can step back and look out of the window at Maungakiekie and see the actual phase of the moon. So I like to think of that as the environmental Te Ao Maori view of how you would look at the phase of the moon. And these two are connected by a hidden mechanism. So as you turn this, you can look up and see the phase of the moon that you're producing. And then this one's about Pacific navigation. So all of those same techniques to do with stars rising and setting that are used to tell the names of the months are also used for navigation. So in this, there's another Purako story of must be when it's rising, it's the other way up. So it looks like a hook that's being pulled out of the ocean. That's it. So yeah, thanks very much for listening. I hope that was interesting. So yeah.
But before we do that, does anyone have any questions? Yeah.
Did you already mention how you got into this?
That's really that sequence of events was kind of how I got into it, really.
Yeah.
Or how go back to the first slide.
I wasn't here at the very
Oh, sorry. Okay. Well, I'm a mechanical engineer, and I'd worked for Fisher & Paykel Healthcare and various companies, and a few times during those jobs, I'd gone to conferences and had to made some physical models to explain things to people. And the other thing, contributing factor, was I was a cub parent, a cub leader. My son wanted to do cubs, and the leaders were all leaving. So I spent about 9 years having to keep 30 kids occupied once a week. So I did a lot of hands-on making things, firing rockets, and so I got quite a good idea for what engages kids with things, and I really enjoyed that. And yeah, I grew up in the UK, and there's a guy, Tim Hunkin, that built. Tim Hunkin, yeah. So he was one of my heroes. There's in the basement of the Science Museum in London. There's the gallery, which I think is still there. A whole lot of exhibits that explain how household appliances work, including a cross section of a toilet that's got a poo that gets flushed around, so you can crank the handle and watch how the he builds these arcade machines. And if you ever go to the UK and get a chance, Southwell Pier, there's it looks like an arcade, but it's these very humorous machines that are slot. You put money in them, but they take this sort of satirical view on society. He was one of my inspirations. And the other thing was visiting the Exploratorium in San Francisco. Have you heard of that? That's very topical. So Frank Oppenheimer, who's what's the other guy's name? My mind's gone blank. The guy that wasn't the main atomic bomb Oppenheimer, the brother, went on to form Robert. Yeah, so not Robert, but Frank formed the Exploratorium. The Exploratorium is like the original science centre, and basically in the old place you went in and there was a wall, there was a glass wall, and on the right-hand side was the workshop with all the lathes and milling machines and people making these things. And on the left-hand side was all the finished exhibits. And they bring out sort of half-built things for the people to test. So I went there, and it was kind of my dream job. So roughly 10 years ago, I gave up my day job and started to do this try and make a living doing it. So I do quite a lot of this. I still do some product design, more serious commercial engineering work as well. So, yeah.
Tim Pumpkin, he had a TV series in the 80s called Secret Life of Machines, and he's actually released all of them on YouTube.
Yeah.
You go to YouTube and search for Tim Pumpkin or Secret Life of Machines, and they are just brilliant. Your mechanism really reminded me of it.
He's got a real knack for explaining things, and his stuff is all physical. Well, it's electrical, but it's physical. It's not screen-based stuff. Yeah, so I don't know if you've all already seen the gallery and the exhibits, but we can just wander through and have a look, and I can talk about them a bit more. Okay, thank you. Yeah, just there's a little switch. Can you feel the switch?
Oh, man.
There you go.